Nobody helped her. Not a single person in that crowded store moved. They just stood there and watched. Marcus had been having the worst week of his life. His landlord had just raised the rent. His car needed repairs he couldn't afford. And his 7-year-old daughter had been asking for new shoes for 3 weeks. He walked into that grocery store just to grab bread and milk, the cheapest ones on the shelf. He was not looking for trouble. He was not looking to be anyone's hero. But what he saw near the exit of that store stopped him completely. A girl in a wheelchair, maybe 19, 20 years old. Her clothes were worn. Her shoes had a hole near the toe. She was thin in the way that tells you she hadn't been eating well. And she was surrounded. A store manager in a red vest was pointing his finger in her face. Security had her bag on the counter. And a small crowd of shoppers had gathered around her like she was some kind of show. The girl wasn't crying. She wasn't shouting. She was just sitting there very still, holding herself together with everything she had. Marcus stopped. He looked around. Nobody moved to help. People were filming on their phones. Some were shaking their heads. One woman actually whispered to her friend and laughed. He walked over. The manager was saying she had hidden a sandwich and a small bottle of juice under the blanket on her lap. The total value was maybe $4. $4. And this man was talking about calling the police, pressing charges, making an example out of her. The crowd was nodding along like this was justice. Marcus looked at the girl. She finally looked up at him, and her eyes were steady but exhausted. The kind of tired that doesn't come from one bad day. That comes from a long, hard life. He asked her name. She said it quietly, Sophia. He asked her if she had taken the food. She didn't lie. She said yes. She said she hadn't eaten since the day before and that she had no money on her. She said she was sorry. Her voice didn't shake. She owned it completely. And somehow that made it worse. Marcus turned to the manager and asked how much the sandwich and juice cost. The manager told him and then started, talking again about policy and theft and setting an example. Marcus reached into his pocket. He had a $20 bill. It was the last one he had until his next paycheck 3 days away. He put it on the counter and told the manager to keep the change and drop it. The manager looked at him. The crowd looked at him. Someone stopped filming. The manager said it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. Marcus looked at him and said, very calmly, that the principle of letting a hungry girl in a wheelchair go without food was not one he wanted any part of. He said it quietly. He didn't yell. He didn't perform for the crowd. He just meant it. Something shifted. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the $20 still sitting on the counter. Maybe people in that crowd finally heard themselves from the outside. The manager picked up the money, said nothing, and walked to the back. Security stepped away. The crowd slowly broke up. Marcus pushed Sophia's wheelchair to a table near the store entrance and sat with her while she ate. He bought her a proper meal from the deli counter. A hot sandwich, a drink, a small bag of chips. She tried to say no. He told her his daughter would have wanted him to. They talked for almost an hour. Sophia was 22. She had been paralyzed from the waist down since she was 16 after a car accident. Her mother had passed away 2 years ago. She had been living in a small room she rented from an elderly neighbor, surviving on a small disability payment that barely covered the rent. She had applied for every assistance program she could find. She was also quietly trying to finish an online degree in graphic design because she said it was the one thing nobody could take from her ability to do. Marcus told her a little about himself too. Divorced, single dad, working 2 jobs, not rich, not even close, but getting by. He gave her his number and told her if she ever needed a meal or someone to talk to call. She thanked him in a way that wasn't dramatic, just real. He drove home, made dinner for his daughter, and didn't think of himself as a hero. He thought about how close he had come to just walking past, how easy it would have been, how everyone else had. 3 days later, he got a phone call from a number he didn't know. A man's voice, calm, formal, serious. The man said his name was Robert and that he was Sophia's father. Marcus was confused. Sophia had never mentioned her father. He assumed he wasn't in the picture. Robert explained. He and Sophia's mother had separated when Sophia was young. He had lost contact, made mistakes, spent years trying to find her after the accident. By the time he did, Sophia wanted nothing to do with him. He had respected that, but had never stopped watching from a distance, making sure she was safe through people he hired. He knew about the incident at the store. He had seen everything. Robert was not a poor man. Robert was, in fact, the kind of man who owned buildings, multiple. He ran a real estate development company with properties across 3 states. He had more money than Marcus would see in 10 lifetimes. And he wanted to meet the man who had done what he had been too absent, too late, and too guilty to do himself. They met at a coffee shop. Robert was quiet, serious, a man clearly carrying a lot of weight. He thanked Marcus, not with speeches. He thanked him the way someone does when they really mean it and don't have enough words. Then he asked Marcus what he needed. Marcus laughed a little. He said he was fine. Robert looked at him and said he had watched the footage. He had seen the $20. He knew what that $20 had meant for a man with a daughter and a 3-day gap until payday. Marcus didn't answer for a while. Then he said his daughter needed new shoes and he was behind on rent. Robert nodded. Within the week, Marcus's rent was paid in full for the next 6 months. His daughter got her shoes and a few other things she needed for school. Robert also connected Marcus with a property management company he owned that was hiring, a real job with real hours and real pay and health insurance. But here is the part of this story that matters most, and it has nothing to do with money. Robert went back to Sophia, not with money, not with gifts. He sat outside her building and waited. She came out and saw him and didn't move for a long time. He didn't try to explain everything. He just said he was sorry. He said he had been sorry for years and that sorry doesn't fix anything. But it was the only place he knew how to start. She didn't forgive him that day. She didn't have to. But she let him buy her coffee, and that was the beginning. Marcus still thinks about that afternoon in the store, about how easy it is to look away, about how one small choice, $4 worth of food, a $20 bill, 5 minutes of not walking away, can crack something open in people that has been sealed shut for years. He didn't save Sophia. She didn't need saving. She was already surviving on her own. He just showed up at the right moment and chose not to be like everyone else. And sometimes that is enough to change everything.